project is being done in Rota, unlike my other colleagues from Veri. By the way, I'm not from Veri, I'm from the College of Natural and Applied Sciences, but I am their Calabash cousin. So I'm always, working with them. And, but that's why people think I'm from Veri, very close people. Okay, and again in Rota, there has been some activities and some work related to the improving the conditions of the watershed so that the sedimentation, which is a major problem in Rota, in Guam, I'm sure in Saipan, there has been a lot of work to reduce those because, as you know, what happens on the upper land will definitely affect the ocean and shoreline. So, as part of the preserving and improving the conditions so that the sedimentation will not be as much as a problem as it is now, there was a grant awarded to us, to the College of Natural and Applied Sciences, and we started working on that. Before that, there was already a lot of revegetation program in Rota to improve the watersheds. But then there was not really much of the monitoring and was not really quite sure if the efforts are actually having any effect. So when I came in, we decided to actually monitor not only the revegetation efforts, but also their effect. So that's where this project is about. And of course, again, in this project, I have myself and Sidonia is one of our research associates. I still call him a student, even though she graduated and she already got her master's. And then, of course, there are some other people in Rota that I will acknowledge at the end. Okay, what is Rota? I know most of you know, but this is because when I go around the world, well, at least some areas like the state, try to introduce the island to the people who do not know where Rota or Guam is. So I always have some of these maps to try to introduce the island. But I'm sure most of you all know where is Rota. It's a beautiful island, just like Saipan, like Guam, and there is a beautiful also watershed on the coastal areas, on the near the ocean. And unfortunately, some of these watersheds are being damaged by soil erosion and sedimentation. This is again another picture of the, maybe I stay here so I can see that. Another picture aerial photo of some of the watersheds. I think okay, sorry. I need to learn this first. Okay, now this is a overall view, but if you get some closer picture, these are some of the areas on those watershed. This is called Kalahasa watershed area, which you see a lot of areas like this that are being eroded and basically exposed to rain and water and wind and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of those, and in Guam we have a lot of them also, and we call them Badlands, and also some other islands they call it, I guess, Badlands, because they are not capable of supporting any kind of vegetation. Okay, now again another closer look at some of those Badlands areas. As you can see, not only those that are exposed, but also they are losing a lot of sediment, they are losing a lot of soil. So these soil, of course, they end up eventually into the shoreline, rivers then, and then eventually to the shoreline. Okay. All right, this is another view of some of those areas from the satellite images. Again, as you can see, there is a lot of badlands, as we want to call it. And so the watershed, Kalahasa watershed specifically, is the area that is already being mapped, and there are several streams that they eventually drain into the ocean, And before even get started, they developed this map basically separating different part of the watershed into the sections so they can work on it. So some of these sections that are being vegetated, some of them are not, and some of them are just left as they are. So then we try to work on them and monitor. And again, some of the purpose of this project, again, as I mentioned, is to identify the priorities on those areas, and then also design a technique so that we can actually quantify or monitor and the areas that are being affected by sedimentation and by soil erosion, and quantify those effects. Okay, some of the management practices that we used before, they were planting trees, and of course also some vetiver grass. I will talk about this vetiver grass, some of you may not know. And so in this project, we basically trying to plant vetiver grass on some of those areas that I showed you earlier, that they were exposed and they were subject to the sedimentation. And to do that, we have to do a lot of hiking. Because those areas very rough to reach, you have to take the vetiver grass, as you can see here, to those areas and then plant them. Before, again, there were some of this done, but it was not done the way they should be, and so they were not as effective. So then that's why when we came into the picture and we tried to do the work that they were doing a little bit more different and more effective. So we are taking these vetiver grass to the sites, and again, as you can see, a lot of hard work and hard hiking goes up some of these very, very rough conditions. And then again, of course, doing all this, you always have to do advertisement. As you know, one of the first or very effective way of trying to tell people what you're doing or who are you with is advertising. If you are a football player, or a follower of different football games at any university, when I have seen some of these people that they first try to advertise for the university, and so this is trying to say where we are from. And these are some of the people who are helping us. Some of them volunteers, some of them actually the staff of the DLNR, Department of Land and Management Services, and so they are helping us. And then of course the volunteers, now they are taking their break for following these. And I'm taking the opportunity to take their pictures while they are taking the break. Okay, now here is the planting process. As you can see, we are putting a kind of line here, and then put a fertilizer. These white pallets, they are fertilizers, and then we plant the here again, as you can see. Then we plant the individual vetiver seedlings. And you may not know that vetiver grass is does not grow by seeds. In other words, it does produce seeds, but seeds are not viable. So you have to produce seedlings, mass-produce seedlings, and then take them to the field as you just saw, and then plant them in there. So individually we'll plant them all in each site. Again, here just basically showing, how to plant them so that they can survive and eventually become. Okay, now these are some of the areas that we have planted. As you can see now, this is a row of vetiver grass being planted. And so let me show you some of the results of those plantations. Well, you remember this picture. This is the area that I showed earlier, that there are a lot of exposed area and called Badlands. So these are some of the areas that we have been planting vetiver grass. And here it is. The same area that we just saw in the previous picture. Again, vetiver grass is being planted in a row as a hedge around the strategic area around that specific exposed area, exposed land. And there are some, of course, some of them are numbered as a plot number, and again, as you can see, the vetiver grass is being planted. And here's another picture of the vetiver being planted. And this one, actually, I'm saying that these are about 4 months old. So this vetiver grass is already growing very nicely. And some of these areas I was really surprised that the vetiver grass can grow because there's nothing young there except there's a little pallet of fertilizer that we added. But it's all badlands cannot support any vegetation. But they are growing very well. Okay, here is another view of the area. Before, they had some, actually these are some of the vetiver grass that they had before. And what happened, they had them in here, they had them in there, they had them in there, and they were not effective, and actually, in a way, they were causing more erosion because when you have them in distance, and then the water cannot go through them but go around them, then it makes it a little gully, and so there will be more sedimentation. Now, when we came in, I advised that we have to put these vetiver grass in a very close line, 15 centimeters apart, and when they grow, I'll show you the picture, they grow like a hedge and nothing can pass them anymore. Okay, here is another picture of me and James, who is the, one of the staff at the DLNR. And here is the Sidonia, again, proud, showing the effect of some of the evacuation. Now, one of the things that I should have, here we are showing is that between those hedges, the new vegetation is growing, and this is one of the probably the most impact of this vetiver. Oh, what happened? Anybody? Oh, here. So where you have the vetiver grass, it not only prevent the sediment from moving away from that area. In other words, not only traps the sediment, but also the sediment being trapped in here provide condition for the revegetation of the local vegetation. So in other words, vetiver grass not only help with the soil erosion or reduces the soil erosion or even maybe prevent it, but also provide condition for new vegetation to come back. So those pictures that you saw earlier, the badland, now is this. So this is what we're trying to do. Now, and this is a little bit older. This vetiver is about a year old, as you can see now, it's like a hedge. It's like a solid wall. Nothing can go through it. Whereas before, a couple of years ago, before I come to the picture, and they had them again, like I say, they had some vetiver grass here, some in here, and they were not doing anything. And now, as you can see, whatever is that soil is lost from here, it gets trapped here, and new soil will be developed and new vegetation. Of course, in this case, this is a very high, very elevated, and basically the water cannot stand there, in other words, so that can support the new vegetation like in here. In here it's kind of like depressed area. As the water moves, the sediment leaves behind, but the water is still there, and some nutrient from the sediment that came here can support the new vegetation. Okay. All right, now I'll move faster a little bit. These are some of the project road again. I think pretty much I have mentioned that the very first year of this project, this was a 2-year project. The very first year, we spent a lot of time deciding how to do it and what kind of equipment to order and how to install them and so on and so forth. And more than being in Guam and ordering things in the US, we stayed a lot of time, had to go to Australia to come back to us. So it took a lot of time. And then the second year we started actually planting and then started monitoring. Now we are pretty much in this stage is here. And we are hoping to expand the project so we can continue monitoring and actually get a conclusive result. These are some of the equipment that we have used. As you can see, very simple, soil samplers. and also some of these data loggers, turbidity meters, rain gauges, and so on and so forth. So we did a lot of, we got a lot of gadgets. Here again, rain gauges. This is the water quality meter, which basically measures the turbidity. We put them in the river, but they move them. We do not leave them there. So these are moved. These the level loggers stay in the water. They are in the river. So each river, and if you remember the map that I showed you with the different streams coming down the watershed, each one of those have at least 4, actually 5 of them, because 4 in the river and 1 outside, to compare the water level versus when there is no water. And then we have flow meters that we actually measure the flow in every other week. And also we do some, we have taken some soil samples, which I'll show you. Not only that, but also we look at the sand in the ocean area on the shoreline. So this is some of our sampling techniques. Those, as you can tell, very hard to actually use this soil probe. So we have to actually use these shovel and axe to get the sample. And this is the bucket that was hanging in my boots. Okay, and we collect the samples and bring them to the soil lab in Guam, which those results are hope they will be available tomorrow when Sidonia comes to Rota, and I'm going to Rota. This time I don't have the result of the soil, but hopefully she will bring them. Okay, so this is some of those streams that you saw on the satellite image. You remember there was so many of them. Well, this is one of them, and we have named them TK1, TK2, TK3, and TK4. TK1, if I can remember when we get to them, is the one that are not vegetated. And TK2 and TK3 are the ones that are vegetated, either with the Vetiver grass or some other vegetation such as acacia and other trees. And then TK4 is the one that we just left them as they are, just the natural condition, didn't do anything to them. Okay, some of the results. Here is the stream level versus the rainfall on unvegetated. This is hourly measurement. So those devices that you saw earlier, they are in the rivers, and also, like I said, they are outside, such as rain gauges. So they can measure the amount of rain constantly, hourly. So we try to put them in a graph in an hourly basis, but then we thought that might be easier if we try to okay, here the different plots. So we have unvegetated hourly streams, and also we have the stream level. So we have the stream level versus the rainfall. We have revegetated, again looking at the rainfall versus the stream level. We have the revegetated, again this one with the different vegetation. And then we have natural vegetation, which we didn't do anything again with the stream level. And we also have been looking at the rainfall versus the turbidity. And this is probably one of the parameters that we would like to look at a little more closely. And so in here, again, as you can see, every 3 hours we measure, or the device which is in there, measuring the numbers or the turbidity and downloading it to our computer. And again, as you can remember, TK4, which is 4, which was the one, I need to remind myself, go back to this one. Okay, TK4 is the, oops. Okay, TK4 is the natural vegetation, I'm trying to remember, and TK1 is the unvegetated. So let's go back to the root. Okay, so again, average rainfall and turbidity. Again, as you can see, TK4, which was a natural condition, shows so much turbidity. But the TK1, which was the unvegetated, as you can see, the turbidity is pretty high, or relatively higher than that. But again, these data need to be more worked on so we can have a more understandable result. And we also looked at the same data in every 12 hours. So if this was in 6 hours, this was in 3 hours. So we are looking at 12 hours and then 24 hours. So we're breaking down the data into different time lapses. So we see, so maybe hopefully we can see the results or the differences a little bit better. So we are working on this data quite extensively to make them more understandable. Here is the average rainfall versus extreme discharge. So in addition to looking at the rainfall versus turbidity, rainfall versus discharge, and other parameters, so we are trying to look at this data in many different ways, so we can again come up with a conclusive result. And again, here is the rainfall versus discharge in 12 hours period. And then, of course, these are, again, all those data in the stage, showing them in a stage format. So, again, so far we have detected that the unvegetated areas are producing more sediment than the vegetated area, and that is a good thing. Well, for us, like Gary said, the researchers, so we see that some of our efforts have some effect, but again, we have to work on that a little bit more. Okay, now when we do this in Rota, we also like to people know what we are doing, because every once in a while we go to the island and then some people wondering what are these guys doing here. So we set up educational setting at any occasion that comes up, like festivals and so on and so forth. And so this is one of those activities that we are showing the people our equipment, and then also we have a poster here showing the areas that we're working and so on and so forth. Here's another picture of Sidonia here explaining to the kids, and we even went to the schools, tried to explain to the kids, not only just tell them that what we're doing, tell them that what they are not doing, because or what they are also doing. And in terms of burning, that's something that they do, and also in terms of not doing anything, preserving their natural resources. So we are trying to tell them that if you do burning, you're basically causing a lot of these things in this exposed area. And if you do preserve the area, you would protect your own island. So we are trying to kind of communicate with especially with the younger members of the community. And so far, again, like I said, by the way, we still have some more data, especially like the soil analysis data, that I'm hoping that Sidonia will bring with her. Tomorrow we're going to have this presentation, hopefully with more information on that in Rota, before the mayors and all the people who are involved. But these are so far what we have got, but our recommendation is that we need to have more time so that the plants, Vetiver or any other, that they are being planted there, they get established, and then therefore they will have more effect on preventing sedimentation and protecting the area. And and also more data is required too, so that we can play with them and have a better looking graph, so we can understand it better. And more community increase, community awareness. Now I just say very a little about the vetiver. Some of you may not know what is the vetiver grass. Of course, you saw some pictures earlier. But vetiver grass is the reason it works, especially for soil erosion control, and it has many other use. In fact, just outside before we start, there was a gentleman who approached me and he said, why didn't you use a vetiver that can also be used for oil? the roots of it. I said, well, there's so many uses of vetiver, but in this case we are trying to prevent sediment, trying to protect the soil from erosion, but there are some other uses for that. But anyway, the one reason that works for protecting the soil is that it has a very, very extensive root system, and these roots are very fine, and they can go up to 17 feet deep and up to 5 feet, up to 5 feet wide. And also, if you pay attention, the roots are very fine and very hairy, so they can hold on to the soil and keep the soil in place. Rather than, for example, some other grasses like the swordgrass, that they have very shallow roots and very coarse roots, and they actually disperse the soil. So when the rain comes in, runs through the leaves, accumulates, so we have a high volume of rain and high velocity. By the time it reaches the surface of the soil, it washes away the soil. That's why when you look at the aerial photography of some of these areas, all covered and green and beautiful. And then when big rain comes in, you see all the oceans are murky and a lot of sediment coming in from those areas, and you wonder why. Well, it's because the swordgrass is not able to hold on to the soil and causes a lot of impact, more sedimentation. But this vetiver grass is very, very protective, because very, very effective in that case because of the root system. And of course, the leaves can go up to 8 feet high, and they are very sturdy, and they always stand up, and they are very able to hold on, trap the sediment which is trying to pass. Okay. Here is we use this vetiver grass in Guam. There was some of you who have traveled in Guam probably, maybe if you go around the island, especially Junior area, you remember there was a area here that this was Pago Bay area. This area was all jungle, like in here and there. But then a company came in, and developers came in and tried to deforest or devegetate all that area and make housing. And now if you go, there's a lot of nice housing there. Well, when they did that, there was a lot of sediment coming to the ocean all over the south. Of course, like I said, even before this, there is still some murky conditions, but this time was very, very bad. So all over the southern EPA, USDA, all the other agencies, and of course activists, environmental activists, ran to them and say that you cannot do this. This is violation of all kind of things. So they stopped them basically. So they scratched their head and they say, what we do? They called the University of Guam, and then they called I think the president office and told them about it. And they said, well, you have a guy with an accent, you need to call him, and he probably can help it. So they called me, and they came in and talked to me about it, and I went and looked at it, and I said, well, the best way to protect this and prevent this and make you work is to plant the vetiver. So I asked them to get some vetiver grass and cut them like this and plant them, and then put them in this exactly the area that in this area, the open area, which was all the sediment was rushing into the ocean. So I asked them to plant the vetiver grass like this, like a hedge, and then that basically prevented all that. And then the USDA and others and EPA and all the activists came and looked at it. They said, okay, now you can go ahead and cut the trees and build the buildings. So, and with this, they basically, it's just like a solid wall. And of course, this is only one hedge. I have other pictures that unfortunately is not in this presentation. Later on, I went to them and I said, you need to have 3 hedges, because this hedge is against the ocean. And as you can see, it's very close to the ocean. It's about like 15 meters, 15 feet from the ocean. I told them they're very salty wind will damage this one, so you have to have another one here.